My topic for the Macroeconomics and Faith video project stems around the question, should there be forced charitable actions in government? Specifically talking of stimulus checks, healthcare, and disability benefits. I believe that all three of these are considered charitable actions to some point because they give money to people without the expectation of them paying it back or having to work for it in some way. I believe that my argument begins with the question, is there morality outside of Christianity? But simply, no, there's not. James 1:17 states, every good gift and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. All morality ultimately stems from God, and charity comes from that morality. There's a saying that states you can't expect non-Christians to act like Christians. We can't expect people who are not Christians, who don't follow God, to want to give money to others and thus cannot force them to do so through the usage of their tax dollars. Many non-Christians have issues with the concept of healthcare due to the many different ways it can be used and many different ways the system can be taken advantage of. For example, there is a mother-in-law suite behind my house that we lend out to friends and family who need a place to stay. I have two situations where both people were on disability benefits, but they used it in very different ways, and the outcomes were very different. The first was with a woman, I think in her late 30s, and she had severe diabetes of some form. I don't completely remember. And she had disability benefits. So she got money from the government due to her disabilities, which she did need. But instead of using it to help herself get back on her feet and then to go out and find another job or find a good job or anything like that, she kind of took advantage of it and used it as a way to just be lazy and not do anything all day. And she was in the position where she could have gotten a job. She had several times throughout the time she was staying with us, but she lost them due to issues that were not related to her health disabilities. She ended up completely trashing the mother-in-law suite that we had and had to leave on a very bad note. And so she used the charity she was given from both the government and my parents in a way that was not good, and she took advantage of it, and she really just played the system so that she didn't have to work and she just was able to live off of other people's charity. So that was the first instance. The second instance was with my grandfather. So a couple years after the first lady, my grandfather moved in. My grandfather and my grandmother moved into the mother-in-law suite. And my grandfather was on disabilities due to a severe disease he had called arachnoiditis. And arachnoiditis kind of turned the spinal fluid, I think, into bone. So he ended up being paralyzed like from the waist down. And so he had absolutely no way to work to support his family and was in desperate need of the disability benefits that he got. But he was the type of person where if he was able to work, he would have done so in a heartbeat. And he did not enjoy being stuck in a hospital bed for the rest of his life. And he would have done anything possible to work for his money instead of having to take the government's money. But he ended up having to do so. And so these were two situations. Both needed disability money from the government, but one used it in a very bad way and took advantage of the system while the other truly needed it. So this is just an instance that's kind of stuck with me, where there's a parallel that I've seen firsthand between two people who both received disability money, but who used it in very different ways. And so it kind of just shows how our system and the way the government has set up disabilities, and healthcare that, on the one hand, yes, it's very helpful for people who need it, but it's also very easy to take advantage of. So that is definitely one way that I believe non-Christians would have an issue with their tax dollars being spent on things such as healthcare and disabilities and other charitable events and activities, because it can be taken advantage of really easily. Another reason people who are not Christians could have issues with charity is the effects that it can have on our economy. Our nation has an obscene amount of debt, and using tax dollars for charities or universal health care or stimulus checks could cause the debt to increase to a point where it will negatively affect our future generations. We may not see it right now, but people down the line, our children, our grandchildren, great-grandchildren, etc., could face very negative consequences for the amount of debt we have. So another reason that people who are non-Christians could have issues with the government spending money on just like giving it to people is seen through COVID-19 stimulus checks and benefits and things that the government did to try to boost the economy through all of that. So after the global pandemic started to kind of subside a little bit, the government started giving out stimulus checks and benefits, trying to help people get back on their feet and recover from a global pandemic, which was all very nice to hear, but we're now seeing the effects of that in the insane prices on goods and services and the astronomical inflation. For example, gas prices are insane right now, and everything else we are finding that we have shortages of, and we also just have really high prices on things. And then inflation is not fun. Overall, I do not believe charitable works should be included in government, just simply because charitable works are a concept of morality, which you cannot force upon people who do not follow God and thus do not have any morality, any true morality. I believe they have some form of morality simply because we're made in God's image, but that is not a topic to be explored in an economics video. So going back to it, I don't believe charitable works should be included in government for the fact that it's using people's tax dollars in ways that they may not agree with, and then for the effects it has on our economy, with how there are better ways that money can be spent, and that money can be spent in ways that people are able to take advantage of the situation and of the system, which would just send us into further debt than we already are and would just mess up everything. Granted, healthcare and disability benefits are really helpful for people who need them, as are stimulus checks and expansionary policies in general. So when the government uses that, it just has to be carefully monitored, and stipulations need to be put in place so that people don't take advantage of the system, and we're not just giving money to people so that they can continue living in people's mother-in-law suites and not actually getting back on their feet. Thank you for listening to my video.